fight inside the City Fresh grocery store here at 120th and 3rd. Employees had to drag him out into the street and lock the doors. About 20 minutes later, the same guy returned with a kitchen knife in hand, banging on the windows, threatening those inside the store. Andrew Natives, the executive officer of Patrol Bureau Manhattan North, explaining what the 25th Precinct cops did when they arrived at the scene.
The subject failed to comply with his verbal commands and got within close proximity of the officers, with the knife extended out when one of the officers discharged a firearm.
And the suspect critical but stable after surgery. Cops telling us he's been arrested multiple times but aren't saying for what. The knife was recovered on the ground here. Glenn Shuck, 1010 Wings, 92.3 FM in East Harlem.
The NYPD this morning is investigating a deadly Easter Sunday shooting outside a Brooklyn restaurant. This happened at 6 last evening at 2961 Fulton Street in Cypress Hills. A suspect repeatedly shot two men, ages 30 and 50. The younger man died at the hospital. Details are still coming into our newsroom, but we know somebody was taken into custody. Mayor Mamdani today is focusing on racial equality in the city. Mamdani is releasing 2 reports about the cost of living for Black and Latino New Yorkers.
Together, these reports establish a framework for how our city will both measure affordability and plan for the future. The true cost of living measure confirms what New Yorkers have long known to be true. Too many people cannot afford the city that they love.
The mayor recently withdrew a proposal to increase property taxes by 9.5%. That was not popular with Black homeowners. On Easter, his honor spoke at 2 Black churches, one in the Bronx, one in Brooklyn, talking about how his administration is trying to reverse the trend of Black New Yorkers being forced out of the city because it's too expensive. To Long Island now and talk about the 5-finger discount. A Brooklyn woman has been arrested in Elmont for allegedly stealing $50,000 worth of merch from more than 24 stores.
Authorities say the 41-year-old suspect's crime spree was going on for 8 months. Magdalena Sampson is accused of going into stores, including Marshall's, and stealing $50,000 worth of items. Detectives say this happened at 27 stores across Nassau County. Police say at each store she managed to leave without paying for the items. Sophia Hall, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM on Long Island.
Savannah Guthrie is back at the Today Show anchor desk.
Welcome to Today on this Monday morning. We are so glad you started your week with us, and it is good to be home.
Guthrie and co-anchor Craig Melvin getting right down to business. Guthrie saying, here we go, ready or not, let's do the news. At the end of the first 25 minutes of the show, she high-fived Melvin. Guthrie has been off from work, staying with her family ever since her mother, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, was reported missing on February 1st. As part of a video message released from her church in New York on Easter, Savannah talked about feeling abandoned by God, but said the resurrection is not fully celebrated if we do not acknowledge the feelings of loss, pain, and yes, death. There has been no sign of Nancy Guthrie since she disappeared. To the war with Iran now, and President Trump takes questions from reporters at the White House at 1 o'clock this afternoon. This after the president promised on social media to rain hell on Tehran if by Tuesday 8 p.m. it doesn't make a deal to open the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's reaction is one of defiance.
Iran responding to a new deadline from President Trump, who's threatening to bomb Iranian power plants and other infrastructure unless the Strait of Hormuz is opened by tomorrow night. Iran's Navy Command now posting on social media, the Strait of Hormuz will never return to its former state, especially for America and Israel.
Sophie Flay reporting Pakistan has brokered a plan for an immediate 45-day ceasefire as part of a deal to permanently end the war. Its army chief has been negotiating with the U.S. team, including VP J.D. Vance. At his news conference this afternoon, President Trump is expected to talk about the rescue of that American airman after that F-15 was shot down. Keep it here on 1010 Wins for updates. North Korea is now saying what everybody suspected was true. Kim Jong-un's daughter is his heir and successor. South Korea's spy agency released a statement to that effect today. State media in North Korea has already dubbed the teenager Kim's most beloved, respected child. The rapper formerly known as Kanye is at the center of a concert controversy over in the UK.
The top sponsors of a big London music festival have pulled out after Prime Minister Keir Starmer expressed serious concern that Ye would be headlining the 3-day event. Pepsi and Diageo both yanking their support.
passageway was shot. Nobody was injured. Right now in the city, we have 42 degrees. We have sunshine, a few afternoon clouds with a cool breeze and a high of 56.
Now, a commercial message. Larry Mullins here. After an accident, you need a trusted law firm with an army of efficient staff members. That's Spector and Associates, your serious injury attorneys. Spector and Associates understands how devastating an accident can be and will fight relentlessly. Spector and Associates serious injury attorneys are based in New York. Construction accident, car accident, slip, trip, and fall. Call them now. 800-318-8888. Spector and Associates has recovered hundreds of millions for the injured. Been in an accident? Visit crashinjury.com or call 800-318-8888. The lawyers at Spector and Associates serious injury attorneys fight hard, win big to get you what you deserve. Call them now. 800-318-8888. That's 800-318-8888 or visit crashinjury.com. License in the Tri-State, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania.
I'm a 100% kind of guy, so I got Verizon Fios. It's 100% fiber internet because I do everything at 100%. 100% of them. Beautiful shot, 100 degree.
You and the rest 100% fiber internet when you don't get Verizon Fios. It's super fast and reliable with ultra low lag. It's 100% of nothing. Call 1-833-Verizon. Switch today.
Yumia Tuscany has all the ingredients of your favorite rom-coms, starring Halle Berry and arranged marriage and set in the enchanting vineyards of Tuscany. This film is a movie escape we've been waiting for. Don't miss Universal Pictures' Yumia Tuscany, directed by Pat Cornrow, only in theaters this Friday. Rated PG-13, may be inappropriate for children under 13.
And what the reason it turned out is that's where the chicken bucket.
To this story, Jesus is the Messiah, your Messiah, and he is the one who is risen. The Lord lives. Blessed be our rock. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hear more episodes of Daily Manna and find other Christ-centered resources.
That could have an impact, and I think we're seeing that now in Iran, but also in the conflicts we've seen in the Caribbean and elsewhere. So ironically, the Center of Excellence was part of a greater effort to reconcile with the military's legacy of civilian harm that started in the first Trump administration. It came out of the war against the Islamic State. There were thousands of civilian casualties, unintended deaths that the United States caused in Iraq and Syria.
Capital Planning Commission, who just voted overwhelmingly 8-1 to approve the magnificent White House ballroom now rising on this ground. It's a hand-picked group, of course, but and doesn't obviously just has another paper attached to it, but wouldn't change necessarily the essence of the court order coming from Justice Lamb. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to keep Bob after class, and we're going to talk about his new book. This is a true war story. It's an incredible book, and we'll talk about that in the next half hour. And I just want to thank our wonderful panelists for being here, all of you. But Libby and Donald, thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you very, very soon. We'll continue our conversation on the roundtable after this short break.
Support for WMC comes from Cowpots and Farms Farm Market, Connecticut farm family striving to create a sustainable alternative in future by turning composted cow manure into renewable and biodegradable pots for gardens. Cowpots.com. And Mostly Modern Festival, presenting the 7th season of contemporary and modern classical music, June 4th through 20th, at the Arthur St. Music Center at Skidmore College. MostlyModernFestival.org for info.
Coming up today on Midday Magazine, the Albany City Council is expected to vote tonight on an inclusionary zoning ordinance. And we have a discussion with the Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress about its recent housing report, plus the Capitol Press Room with David Lombardo, the latest business news and weather, all today at noon on WAMC.
At All Things Considered, what unites all our conversations is curiosity. Is he a good hugger? Whether we're speaking to an aid worker, what would you want them to know or understand about what Ebola is? A scientist?
But what's in it for the dolphins?
Or a foreign leader?
I will ask the questions. I will ask the questions.
Questions and answers every day on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Listen to All Things Considered daily at 4 p.m. on WAMC Northeast Public Radio.
Underwriting support of WAMC just makes sense. Repeat clients love that we support WAMC in public broadcasting, and new clients are happy they found us. We're reaching a wonderful community of smart, interested listeners in a wider geographic than we have in the past. Our underwriting support of WAMC has been a great success for Plaza Travel.
BBC News with David Harper. The Israeli Defense Minister says the military has attacked Iran's largest petrochemical plant at Asal-Ye. Israel Cat says the facility is no longer functioning, along with another petrochemical site targeted last week. Tehran hasn't confirmed whether the sites are offline. Iran says the intelligence chief of its powerful Revolutionary Guards Corps has been killed in a US-Israeli airstrike. The unit led by General Majid Khademi had been accused by the US of playing a key role in the violent suppression of anti-government protests in January. The White House says President Trump has not signed off on a proposal to end the conflict between the United States and Iran. Under the proposed deal put together by Pakistan, the ceasefire would come into effect immediately and the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened. Indonesia has announced a 28% rise in the surcharge on jet fuel as it tackles disruptions to supplies caused by the war in the Middle East. The government has also allowed airlines to raise a cap on domestic ticket prices. In other news, 41 coal miners trapped underground in Russian-occupied Ukraine following a Ukrainian air attack have all returned safely to the surface. Earlier, Ukraine said it hit a Russian warship on the Black Sea coast. A court in Russia has sentenced a former governor of the Kursk region to 14 years in jail for corruption. Alexei Smirnov was found guilty of embezzling money meant to be used to build defense structures along the border with neighboring Ukraine. The Indian authorities have asked security officials on the border with Bangladesh to look at the feasibility of deploying crocodiles and snakes to prevent illegal migration and smuggling. A memo from India's Border Security Force asks local teams to investigate releasing the reptiles in rivers along the border where there are no fences. India and Bangladesh share a frontier of more than 4,000 kilometers. Officials say criminals and smugglers are exploiting unfenced stretches of the border. And that's the latest BBC News.
Support for WMC comes from Oswald Food Co-op Albany, celebrating 50 years, announcing its gardening season with organic seeds, locally grown starter plants, flowers, and more. Open daily, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Oswald.com. Open Door Bookstore and Gift Gallery, featuring books, jewelry, personal and home accessories, supporting local artisans and artisans from around the world. OpenDoor-Bookstore.com. And Orthopedic Associates of Dutchess County, fellowship-trained orthopedic and spine specialists, serving the Mid-Hudson Valley for over 45 years. OrthoABC.com to learn more.
To our panel, and it's a special thrill today to have him as a guest talking about his new book. He spent a career studying the Vietnam War, shaping how Americans understand one of the nation's most complex conflicts. A professor at Vassar College and leading voice on U.S. foreign policy, he now turns inward with the book, This is a True War Story, My Improbable History with Vietnam. The memoir blends scholarship with deeply personal discovery, tracing his journey as an adoptee who learns that his biological father was a renowned Marine combat photographer in Vietnam. As Brigham reconstructs both a family history and a national one, the book explores memory and identity and the enduring legacy of war on the battlefield across generations at home. We will have this conversation this morning, and then Bob and I will talk again at Bat and Kill Books in Cambridge, New York on Thursday night for a launch party for the book. Thursday night, 6 o'clock, Bat and Kill Books, and we'll give you more information about that a little bit later on in this segment. In the meantime, it's wonderful. Thank you for staying on, and congratulations on the book.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It's very nice of you.
I know it's been a long time in coming of working on this, and published by our friends at the University of Chicago Press. At what point, after you've gone through all of this, do you think, okay, I would like to tell this story to a wider audience?
As soon as I had the DNA match with a cousin, I knew I had to tell the story. I knew I had a platform that a lot of adoptees don't have. I had published several books before, and I knew that the story was going to have to involve what adoptees live through, and I wanted to use that platform, use that voice, use my experience. You know, I have a PhD in history, and it took a PhD in history to track down my biological family, and I'm not sure that that's what we really want for our families in America. So the minute I had a match, I knew it had to be a book. And
correct me if I'm wrong on this, but writing a book then helps you sort it out.
Writing a book does. I mean, it just took draft after draft after draft. When I first started writing, it was as if someone handed me, a professional historian, someone handed me the story. It took probably 3 years before I could figure out really that this was a memoir, and so I had to have it be more personal. And so that was a process, yeah. So I learned a lot about writing a memoir, and I also learned an awful lot about how to tell a personal story and make it a national story.
So tell us a little bit about your background as far as being an adoptee and when that comes on your radar and what that means to you and your upbringing.
So we all like linear stories. We like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and my story isn't like that. So I will give you a Vietnam. I mean, as a 13-year-old, I sat in Cambridge Public Library researching everything I could on Vietnam. I eventually